everyone, and welcome to RBN's Daytime Talk Show. I'm your host, Rayette Spence, and we're here to talk about relationship matters. All that matters in relationship. And do relationships really matter? Well, you've tuned into the right channel. We are so excited today to have a behavioral therapist with us. He studied clinical psychology at Texas A&M University, is married to Mrs. Brittany Thompson, and the proud father of Haley Rose. From the beautiful islands of New Providence, help me welcome Mr. Harrison Thompson.
Hello, Rayette, how are you?
Hey, Harrison! How are you?
Man, I am awesome, man. It's a pleasure to be in your presence. How are you?
I'm perfecto. Man, we wake up in such a long time.
It's been a minute.
I'm so excited.
This is all time. I feel good.
I know, right? And so we could just talk candidly, right?
Of course.
I am so excited to have you here. And I was thinking, they gave me the show Relationship Matters. I didn't even have to look far. I was like, you know what? You can't talk about relationships unless you talk to Harrison. So boom, here we are.
Thank you.
Now, I don't want you to get all flustered with the book in my hand. You know why? Because when Harrison speaks, you got to write. So I pulled out my little notebook, and we're going to get started. So, tell us all about, first of all, Harrison, tell us about how Haley when we should celebrate the first birthday.
Man.
Shout out to her for a couple minutes.
For those who don't know, me and my daughter, we actually celebrate the same birthday, August 23rd. So she is now 1 year old. This is her house now. She's walking all over the place. She runs the show. She owns our bed. She owns my wallet. It's a beautiful thing. I am so happy to be a part of her life journey. And I'm just so happy as a father to get to pour into another life, because I do take that role very seriously. And it helps me learn so much about myself. So I'm excited to share in some of those experiences as well when it comes to relationships today.
Excellent, and that's why I did it, because I know we can go right into it. So Harrison, the first thing, the show's name is Relationship Matters. And I always like to do a spin off of that, because I think relationship matters, because it does, and then we can get into the matters of a relationship. Relationship matters, got it? So let's first start with the first thing. Relationship matters. Why is it important for us to forge healthy relationships?
I think a lot of times what relationships offer us as individuals is something that is completely different than what it is we are used to on our own. For example, you don't necessarily need a relationship to be successful, and you don't even need a relationship to be happy. But you find that when you are able to share in your success and in your happiness with a partner, you are then able to achieve things that you may not have been able to achieve on your own. And that is when you start to see the fruit and the beauty of relationships as a whole. Unfortunately, Rayette, what people are doing now is people are getting involved in relationships to try and find something. And that is when the relationship actually becomes a prison. And those individuals are the ones that often report how relationships don't seem to work anymore, when people just don't seem to want the same things that they're used to. And a part of that is actually true. If you are not a happy, whole individual before you get involved into a relationship, that relationship isn't going to have anything to offer to you. And so I'm here to tell people today that relationships do matter. But what matters more is that as an individual, that you are a healthy person, that you are emotionally sound, emotionally secure, a mentally well person, so that once you pour into your relationship can pour back into you.
See, that's good right there. That's good right there. Am I writing? I'm writing. But Harrison, okay, so let's do this scenario. We're talking about the relationship in terms of husband and wife, fiance, boyfriend, and girlfriend. But let's talk about relationships. How do we carry that over to all of our relationships? Let's say mother-daughter, father-son, father-daughter. What are some of the components that we need? Because I feel before we really get into the show, we got to get ourselves together. Because I believe if we're not healthy, like you said, then we won't carry on healthy relationships. So how can I help in those kinds of relationships?
Well, I think what's important as parents, especially how you made mention of like a mother-daughter relationship, or a father-son, or mother-son and mother-daughter. I think it's so very important to recognize what is it that we need help with, right? Because I think too often in our relationships, we don't respect limitations. Like, I think there are some things that we are very good at, and there are some things that we are not good at. If you don't first learn to accept the reality that there are some things you may need help with, number one, you may under respond to a problem. You may think that a problem isn't that serious when really it is. But the truth is, you just do not trust your ability to manage that issue. Number two, you have to be able to label problems effectively and efficiently, right? Because if you don't label a problem effectively, how can you know what to do with this particular problem? You end up being busy without being effective in your relationships. And so many people are busy in their relationships, but they're not effective with their time. And so, like any relationship, it all starts with yourself. How honest are you able to be with you? Were you ready to be a parent? Were you ready for the responsibilities that came with that relationship? Were you prepared to deal with some of the disappointments? And do you have enough love in yourself to continue in that relationship even in the midst of pain? Because our love language, Rayette, tends to stop once we get hurt. But I'm here to say that if your love stops the minute you get hurt, you may not be ready for a real relationship.
That's good. See, that's good. I want to do a somersault right there, but I'm going to try to contain myself. So we're always talking about, and then I'm going to get into some of this Facebook stuff. I got to get into some of that. But we're always talking about boundaries, Harrison. We're talking about boundaries. What are some of the boundaries that we need to establish within our relationship?
I think some of the best boundaries we need to establish is that before there was a relationship, there was a type of individuality, right? I often say that there was a two-ness before there was a oneness. And if we don't learn to respect the two-ness before we try to become one, what ends up happening is we try to get our partner to be more like us. Now, here's what's interesting. The word like implies that if you do not do like I think you should be doing, or if you are not like I am, I end up looking at that difference as a problem. So I think we need to make sure that our mindset has enough room in it to make sure that we can accommodate who this person is. There should be a safe space for this person to have their feelings. They should be able to disagree. They should be able to kind of do their own thing without that being a negative judgment against them. If we don't learn to establish that boundary first and foremost, we may be ending up trying to create a carbon copy of ourselves, which is, I think, the ultimate sin in a relationship.
That's I like that kind of thing, but this is my thing. I've not been taught that. I've not experienced that in the relationships that I was in. Maybe with my parents, maybe with the relationships that I was in before. How do I learn that now that I'm in the relationship that I'm in? And I want this person to be what I want them to be. How do I relearn? Because I need you to be what I need you to be. It's just me. Why can't you be me? How do I go and relearn? Because it's a problem. Trust me, it's a problem. Speaking from experience, it's a problem. How do we relearn? How do we teach ourselves? Or who teaches us? How do we get the help we need?
Well, I think, Rayette, we have a limited capacity to learn certain things. And so maybe instead of relearning, what we need to do is unlearn some unhealthy behaviors so that we can make room for a much healthier way of living and interacting, right? Like, I think we often fall in love with the version of people that exists in our mind, right? Because, especially as a woman, Rayette, you can attest to this. A man can show you a plan at point A and you could already see the point C, B, C, D, E, and F, right? But a lot of times that man may not be able to see it in the way you see it. If you continue to operate based on what you see, you're going to miss the reality that is right in front of you. Now, here's the catch-22. The only thing that is real is this present moment. We like to hope that our future is going to be positive. We like to hope that we are going to be around next week, maybe even tonight. But the truth is, all we have is this moment. In this moment, do we bully our partners into changing? And a lot of times, when we bully people, they don't receive truth. They only receive our bullying. We have to make sure that we are actively helping them, not trying to transform them into what we think they should be. Because then we're trying to play God. And if you need to be what I think you need to be, what does that say about who God has you to be, right? Because I think that that's a very different thing, and we must be very careful not to try and play God when it comes to people in our relationships.
Well, the church girl in me is going to come out like that. I'm simply going to say, if you guys say amen, say ouch. That's another thing. Now, let's talk about this whole Facebook thing that's been going on, Alice, and I want you to speak to it. This 50-50 rule. You know, everyone's been talking about this 50-50 rule, using 50% in the relationship, or whatever relationship it may be. And I bring 50% in this relationship because you got to come with this, and I got this, and all of this stuff that's been going back and forth. Let's speak to that. What are your thoughts on this 50-50 rule? And that transcends across all relationships. What are your thoughts on that?
So, I'll admit to you, right? When I was a younger man, I was big on the 50-50 thing. I felt as though if I am contributing X, Y, and Z, you should be contributing X, Y, and Z as well. Right. You bring your half to the table, I bring my half to the table, and we're good. 50 plus 50 is 100, right? But once I got married, and once I understood what marriage was, which is an institution of service, right? Because you're willfully getting into a legal situation with a person, and a biblical situation with a person where you are serving them in love. The 50-50 debate then falls through, because it's not about what I'm bringing to the table and what you're bringing to the table. It's, do we have an attitude of love and service one and to another? Because only the relationships that don't operate in love need rules. If your relationship has the golden rule applied to it, which is doing unto others as I would have them to do unto me, then you don't need to have the 50-50 talk. But I understand this. We are all trying to avoid pain. We are all trying to mitigate hurt. We've all been in situations where someone took advantage of us, where we felt as though we weren't really being appreciated. And so how do we protect ourselves from that? 50-50. I'm not doing this until I see you doing this. AKA, you're not going to get love from me until I feel that you're loving me in the way that I think you should.
I'm not relinquishing my power.
Exactly. So the 50-50 debate is like a singleness trying to exist in a committed environment. And if you're not ready for real commitment in a relationship, that's not going to make a lot of sense to you. You know what I mean?
That's good right there. And I like that. And so I'm going to be jumping like all over the places because I got to get everything out of you that I possibly can. When we started talking about Haley Rose and the father-daughter relationship. And for me, this is really, really critical for me because I understand that a girl gets her identity from her father. That's just the long and short of it. He kind of validates her. He should be the first man to validate her. So I think there's a lot of missing pieces as it relates to women. Let's talk to fathers as it concerns their daughters. Because we believe that daughters are mama's girls when, mommy should be doing this and whatever. But I believe a big chunk of her and who she becomes comes from her father speaking into her life. Let's talk about that and what fathers should be doing as it relates to their daughters. Because relationships matter.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's good to understand this basic principle. Girls learn how to be women by emulating their mother. Now, oftentimes we think that the emulation of their mother means that's where they get the identity from, but that's not true. You can emulate someone and follow someone without really understanding why you're doing this in the first place, right? But it's not until the father comes along, and you said the word, Rayette, and validates that daughter and everything she saw her mother doing, at that particular point, her identity becomes activated. Because now the father helps the daughter to realize why the woman is to carry herself in the way that she does. Because of his comments, because of the way that he treats her, because of the way he handles her. The girl also recognizes what is it that she needs to expect from a man, which helps her place her self-love in the right position that it needs to be. By my role, by me being in the presence of my daughter and her watching the way that I am responding to people, the way that I am answering the phone, the way that I allow love to cover a multitude of sin, I am helping my little girl to understand that yes, pain is a part of living in life, but we have to make sure that as individuals we are filled with enough love inside of ourselves so that we don't fall down to the level of criticisms and negativity that's permeating so many different relationships. You find that fathers often help their young daughters become more vulnerable in their feelings because a father is able to help the daughter understand that it's okay to feel. Now, the daughter will learn how to express herself from her mother, but from the father, the daughter is able to say, you know what, this makes sense. Thank you for giving me that safe space. Because the daughter can always see her face in her mother, but she can't always see her face in her father. And so it's very important as men that we take this time out to sit with our daughters and to create that environment of peace and of safety. Because once our daughters start to grow up and get out into the world, we're not going to be able to be present at every interaction. If we don't ensure that our daughter's identity is solid, we will lose them to how the people say nowadays, the streets. And once that happens, it's hard to get back.
So what do you say to that girl then, who's from relationship to relationship to relationship looking for that father figure? Because that's really, really what's going on. Who's looking for that validation? Who's looking for that man to speak into her? But she's bouncing from relationship to relationship to relationship, not establishing boundaries, just dealing with whatever has to be dealt with, but she shouldn't be doing it. What do you say to her, Allison? What do you say to that little girl that's now a grown woman, for that little girl
It's going to be hard, but I think what that little girl has to recognize is that she needs some time alone. And being alone, being single, does not mean that there's a problem with you. And I understand that that may be hard, because in our culture, we identify how well or healthy a woman is by her relationships, and I don't think that's fair, because we don't do the same thing to men. But we find that pressure often comes from those who are closest to you, like your family and your friends, who often are pressuring you to get into a relationship. And so sometimes we end up settling because we just want to change our status without really healing and identifying which areas need healing in the first place, right? And so most of the issues that people who jump from relationship to relationship, especially young girls, encounter issues of abandonment, right? Where they're trying to fill a void with just the presence of a man. But listen to me, young ladies. If you go out there looking for a man, that's all you're going to find. Just a man. Just a dude with a penis. And that's not exactly what you need for your life. You have to make sure that you slow down, that you spend some time with yourself so that you can heal and become more aware of your tendencies, so that you don't become a victim to manipulation, so that you don't become a victim to abuse. Because if you don't learn to put up your guard by recognizing that there are some parts of you that may need some rehabilitation, you aren't going to be able to tell the difference between genuine love and someone who's only saying the right thing to get something from you. So slow down. Don't be afraid to be single, even if it's for an extended period of time. I would rather you be single and happy than in a relationship and upset all the time.
Okay. That's good. So we just talked about the girls. Let's focus now on the boys, on the men. So we have these overgrown men looking for wives, disrupting the lives of women. I was going to go there, right? Mm-hmm. Because they somehow, there was a break in their establishing their manhood. What do we say to these overgrown men? They're really, and this is not a bash, but we're talking about relationships here, and this is not going to be a situation where we're going to talk about stuff and leave it. We really want to bring help to these situations, because it's perpetuating cycles, and our kids are getting caught up in these cycles, and it's just going around and around. So somewhere it needs to stop. What do we say to the men? I mean, because like you said, like girls in society, with men, if you may have a girl, or if you may have a baby man you like, you soft, you whatever. What do you say to men that really need to just take some time, heal, and get it together? What do you say to them?
So we obviously have an issue with our men that Our identities are very one-dimensional, right? It seems as though the bulk of Bahamian men, our identities are based upon the head of our penis. And that is a significant problem, because if the only way we know how to connect with women and ourselves is via sex and sexuality, it means that we are missing a large component of what makes a relationship work, like emotional expression, vulnerability, the ability to be discerning, the ability to have management and control over your emotionality, over your sex drive, over your feelings. If a man can only express himself in one dimension, he's opening himself up for a lot of fragility. And when I say fragility, I mean hyperaggression, hypersexuality. He's going to move and bounce around from relationship to relationship in an attempt to find something that doesn't really exist. This is why pornography is so very addictive, especially to men more so than to women, because it gives us the illusion that we can find what it is we are watching. And of course, because it's a patriarchal society, men for years have dictated what it is women ought to be to become wifey material or relationship material. And now that we are moving away from that and women are starting to speak up a little bit more and we are starting to heal a little bit more, believe it or not, we're recognizing that that is no longer healthy for us. And so what I would say to young men, you have to recognize once again when there are things that were missing in your life. If you didn't have a father who was present, or if you didn't hear those words that you were enough, or if you've often been reduced to the size of your wallet, you have healing to do. If you don't learn to heal on your own, you're going to bring all of that toxicity into your relationship, and you're going to begin expecting things from your spouse that she can't fulfill. And it's not going to be her fault. It's going to be your fault. So we have to find a way to take on more ownership for ourselves. Become more accountable for your emotionality. Become more accountable for what you didn't have in your life. Because while you weren't responsible for what happened to you, you are totally responsible for what happens to you tomorrow. And so it's no longer enough to make the excuses. We have to find a way to empower ourselves, to build up our support system, and to find what it is we need out there.
All right, Harrison, what I'm going to do is we're going to play this little game. I'm going to throw out some words to you, right? I'm going to throw out some phrases to you, and you're going to tell me what comes to mind right when I throw out those phrases. Ready? I know you're good for this. You're good for this. Healthy relationship.
Marriage.
Dysfunctional relationship.
Premature dating.
Okay. You can throw out more words if you have them.
Yeah, okay, great. Cool.
Okay, so let's do this again, because I know you have some more for this one. Healthy relationship.
Marriage, I'm thinking about commitment. I am thinking about self-love, and I am also thinking about self-discipline. Those are the ones that come to my mind.
Good. Dysfunctional relationship.
Yeah, premature dating. Not conquering your emotionality. Finding things from people you should be giving to yourself. Learned patterns of behavior from dysfunctional parents. Learned patterns of behavior from a dysfunctional society. Being overly religious and not spiritual enough in your connection with God. All of these things, to me, is what pops up when I hear dysfunction.
Good. Mother-daughter relationship.
I think about relationship bonding. I think about emotionality. I think about vulnerable expression. I think about leaning, right? Leaning on one another for support. And reaffirmation of femininity.
Good stuff. Father-son.
I think about masculinity. I think about leadership. I think about selflessness. I think about endurance and grit. Because there's a lot on men's shoulders, and so those are the things in my mind that a man must embody if a relationship, a successful one, is what he says he wants with his kids, his wife, a girl, his family, co-workers, the whole nine.
Husband, wife.
Long-suffering, empathy, service, and bonding. A commitment to a lifelong journey of helping one another carry their loads.
That's good. That's very good, Harrison. Okay, so let's just go back for our last couple of minutes here. What does a healthy relationship look like?
So, in my mind, a healthy relationship consists of two individuals that aren't necessarily looking for something from the other person, but is interested in sharing in their happiness and sharing in their love with that particular individual. A healthy relationship that has defined boundaries between you and I, where we know where I start and where I stop, where you begin and where you end. A healthy relationship where we aren't trying to change one another into what we think is more appropriate, but a relationship that is built on acceptance, a relationship that does not bastardize and demonize this word help and encouragement to be a form of manipulation, to be a form of passive aggressiveness, to help this person feel more of what it is I'm feeling. To me, those are some of the defining characteristics of what I think a healthy relationship should look like.
All right, and we've done all of that, Harrison. And then, like one person in the relationship is doing all of it, and the other one isn't quite getting it. When is it time to say, you know what? It's time to go. This is a wrap. When does that time come? When do you say this is it?
So I think with even the right person, right, there will be things that you're just going to have to kind of swallow and accept. It's just this comes with the package deal, right? And I'm talking about minor things like the small forgetfulness or that little quirk that they do. But we're not talking about that. If you find that your partner constantly and always seems to create disruption in your life, they always seem to be a source of aggression and annoyance, and they make it very hard for you to even connect with your spirituality, to connect with God, to connect with your family and yourself, it may be time to reevaluate that relationship. However, it is your duty, it is incumbent upon you, if you are the victim in that situation, you have to be clear in your communication. You cannot expect your partner to simply know that what it is they are doing isn't healthy or isn't good for you. You have to speak up. And after you speak up and you are clear, you have to give that person room to grow. I think sometimes we expect too much from people too soon. And so you have to be realistic with what you can expect from that person while they are trying to change. That means you have to look at yourself and figure out, do I have the capacity to even wait? Because if you feel as though you don't have the capacity to wait on that person while they are changing and while they are learning some things, you may be doing yourself and that person an injustice as well. Because it doesn't matter how much that person changes, you're not going to receive it. So I think at a particular point, you just need to stop. Ask yourself if this is too much for you to handle. And not just now, but ask yourself if you can continually handle this type of thing moving forward. If the answer is no, have a conversation to reevaluate some things.
Now, Harrison, you said something really important, that C word. Communication. That C word. Now, listen how I communicate. This is how I communicate. You ready?
Yes.
I don't have a thing to say.
The silent treatment.
The silent treatment. Am I doing the right thing? But I know the answer to that. But I think a lot of women do that. I don't have anything to say. I don't want to talk about it. I don't know if it's in my head. I'm saying I don't want to say the wrong thing, so let me be quiet. But what is the proper way to communicate when husbands say, let's talk about it, and you say, let's not talk about it. What is the proper way to communicate? And I mean, I'm silent for years. You know.
Of course.
Help me help somebody. So how do we communicate? Because I know you get that question all the time, and I think that is the number one problem still in relationships, the lack of communication. But how do we communicate? Because as a single person, that's what I did. Now, and we know that marriage doesn't change anybody. It exposes who you are.
That's true.
So I didn't expect to come over here being a good communicator in my singleness. I just don't have nothing to say. I'm done. I finished talking.
Right.
How do we establish healthy communication in relationships?
So the silent treatment is usually a sign of annoyance, a sign of frustration, a sign of, hey, I believe I shouldn't have to be telling you this thing. You should kind of know this by now. What's going on? If this is how you're going to continually act, I ain't got nothing to say to you. You're a big man, right? You make your own decisions, and it's obvious you're making them, so I ain't got nothing to say. But if we break down the silent treatment, Rayette, you're going to realize it's built on an expectation. An expectation that, as a man, I believe you should know certain things about me. I believe there are certain things that you should be doing, certain things you should pick up on. That could be dangerous because the grandfather of expectation is hurt. And so if we don't recognize that we may have some expectations about our partner, we may have them pegged to do something for us that they don't even have the capability or capacity to do. So I think we need to kind of just press reset on the communication and converse as though we are in kindergarten. The things that you think are so simple that you don't need to explain, the things that every man should kind of know, everybody should kind of not have to be told the same. Talk about that. Because we all have different experiences growing up. Some of us have been through traumatic things where we have learned to not speak up. And so that kind of spills over into our relationship as well. These are the type of things that we have to make sure that we have a grip on. Also, what's bigger than our words, the nonverbal communication as well. A person can be sitting down and talking to you, but it's the sighs. It's the look with the eyes. And the sounds in between the words. Those can sometimes send a contrary message that I'm not interested in what it is you have to say.
Right. Wow.
So if we're not aware of that, Rayette, it can start leaking out into the conversation without us ever having to say anything in the beginning. So make sure you have conversation with yourself. Do you know why you're upset? Do you know for how long you've been upset? Is it possible that this thing could have triggered something inside of you that may not even be relevant to what is going on? If you don't have communication with yourself, engaging your partner is going to be chaos. And I think that's why we have the problems we have.
All right, Harrison, right before we wrap up this question, I want you to answer how important it is for couples to go through therapy, to see a therapist, persons like yourself, to sit down and really talk about it, because, we're getting a little bit better, but it's still kind of taboo, because we don't want to admit that something is wrong, and we can't handle it. So going to a therapist says, look, I don't have control of my relationship. How important is it for couples to do therapy?
I think, obviously, right, and I may be a bit biased there because I'm a therapist, but I think it's absolutely needed and necessary. Even sometimes when you are comfortable, the comfort can blind you from seeing that there may be a problem. See, remember now, just because we are used to things doesn't mean that it's okay. And I think sometimes we need a trusted professional who isn't picking sides, who can be confidential and who can be trustworthy. We need that person to sometimes speak to things that you may not be able to see. And I think it just comes out of an awareness that as people grow over time, things change. Your love language may change, your experiences may change, you may lose loved ones along the way, you may gain some loved ones along the way. These things impact a lot of how we view love. They impact a lot of how we feel about ourselves. And so I think every now and then it's good to kind of sit down with someone to make sure that we are bringing our best self to the table. And I think that that's just what proactive people should do. When we go to the grocery store, we don't just go off of a whim and buy things that we see. We make a grocery list. In order to make a grocery list, you got to take the time out and open up those doors. You got to check the expiration dates to see, do we need eggs? Do we need chips? Do we need water? And then you go and seek that out. So I think we should be able to do the same thing in our relationships without any judgment that something's gravely wrong.
Harrison, listen, that's just never enough time to talk with you. Thank you so much. I mean, this was the perfect launch of the show. But we'll be calling on you once again. Thank you so much for your insight, for your wisdom. Thank you for helping my household. I'm really going to try on that silence thing. I'm really going to put that into practice. So Harrison, about that therapy thing, I know a lot of persons don't even really know who to call on. So can you give us some information? Because listen, if they were to ask me, I was going to recommend you. In fact, I think I need to make an appointment. Tell us how we can do just that.
Definitely. So during lockdown and quarantine, we do have digital therapy available. So I don't want people to think that it's only in office, even though we are considered essential. If you wanted to make an appointment of any kind for you, someone you know, family member, you can reach us at 356-7983 or 4. That's 356 7983 or 4. Or if you're more tech savvy and you want to go and head over to my website, harrisonhelps.com, go to the contact section and you can fill out an email form, sending your name, your number, and a brief description of what it is you want to seek therapy for. And I myself will personally respond to you. Nobody sees those emails except for me. So when you submit it, you can trust that everything will be confidential, secret. Your privacy is our top priority.
Thank you so much, Harrison, once again. Thank you again to the audience, and we'll see you real soon. And remember, relationships matter.
You're watching RBNTV. We are networking, promoting, we're scoring points.